Good Sunday. I guess it's technically afternoon, everybody. I hope y'all are having a great Sunday. I wanted to kind of wait until church let out for everybody to catch people. Hope y'all are enjoying whatever y'all are doing, whether it's spending time with family, relaxing, resting, having just left church. If you're traveling back from the GEC meeting that was this weekend, hope y'all are all having a good time. Hope that I can catch some of y'all while I'm live here. This is going to be a pretty lengthy walk and talk. As you could tell from the, uh, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up a comment, or pull down a comment. Thumb's getting in the way. Anyway, as y'all could see from the title, this is my first stop of the day. Um, at least, related to what I do every trip up to headquarters. And I am at Shiloh National Military Park. Now, the reason why I'm doing this, the reason why I'm stopping here, Friday afternoon, I went live from Friendship Cemetery and the grave of Lieutenant General Stephen D. Lee, who gave us our charge. Now, if you're not familiar with the Sons of Confederate Veterans, you're not familiar with the charge. The charge is simply, or not simply, essentially our mission statement. And it goes like this: To you, sons of Confederate veterans, we will commit the vindication of the cause for which we fought. To your strength will be given the defense of the Confederate soldier's good name, the guardianship of his history, the emulation of his virtues, the perpetuation of those principles which he loved and which you love also, and to those ideals which made him glorious and which you also cherish. And that's to the group, the Sons of Confederate Veterans. Now, to be a member of the Sons of Confederate Veterans, you have to be a male, 12 years old, with the family genealogy of a Confederate soldier who served honorably in the war. And I joined the SCV under Captain Nathan W. Slay. But Nathan has a weird story. Some of y'all have heard it, some of y'all haven't, and you're going to hear it for the first time. Nathan, in 1861, August of 1861, I believe, enlisted in Confederate service in what was the Crystal Springs. No, that was his brother. That was in the Crystal Springs Southern Rights. Um, Crystal Springs Guard, I believe, was the company name. I'm having a little bit of a brain fart. But it was a company in what would become the 6th Mississippi Infantry. And the 6th Mississippi Infantry was first sent up to the Kentucky area in the winter of 1861, where out of the original close to 1,000 men, by the time they got to Shiloh, they only had like 425 men reporting active for service for the entire regiment. Disease ran through the regiment that winter. But anyway, they're sent back to Corinth to recuperate and to get fresh men, and they're put under the command of Albert Sidney Johnston. And in April, early April, late March, of course the Army of Mississippi that was under Johnston, they end up coming up here to Shiloh, and it was across this field, Ray's Field, where Nathan and the rest of the six would attack and be. They would earn their moniker from the casualties that they picked, or not they picked, that they took rather. They would be known as the Bloody Sixth. I think it was close to 300 men were casualties, either wounded or killed. But I'm standing here about to walk across Racefield at a mass burial trench. After the Battle of Shiloh ended, the Federals began, they held the field. Beauregard sent trying to collect his dead. From my understanding, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, Grant didn't want to allow that because he'd already had his men bury the dead. And essentially, what they did is they dug 12, from what research I've been able to find, mass trenches, and they stacked the bodies in there like cornwood. Um, and then covered them with dirt. When the park was founded, there were 9 that were known of, but today I believe it's only 5 that were marked. And I'm here at the first one because this way is Corinth from the way I'm pointing right now, roughly. And the attack came from these woods over. The 6th Mississippi was part of Claiborne's brigade at Shiloh, part of Hardee's. I think Claiborne was a brigade commander at that time, and then brigade, and then Hardee's division. I think Polk's Corps. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I've been driving. Anyway, but this is the spot where they were first engaged at, because Shiloh Church is that way from here. So when they came out of these wood lines and across Ray's Field, they got into first contact. Shiloh Church is kind of where Sherman's headquarters was. Anyway, so it's very possible, very likely, that in this trench right in here, some of the guys who my ancestor fought with are buried here. Some guys from Mississippi, as well as there were Tennesseans in the same brigade, Arkansans in the same brigade, that all took casualties in this area. So it's strongly possible, as well as the retreat back, the very organized falling back rear guard action that the Army of Mississippi had to do after the Army of the Tennessee was reinforced, Federal Army of the Tennessee. That's how you can always tell, as we know, the AOT became the main army after Vicksburg in this theater of operation. It was the Army of Tennessee, the state, but the Federals added the in there, the Army of the Tennessee for their army after the river. Just like the Army of the Ohio was not about the state, it was about the Ohio River. Army of the Cumberland, Army of the Potomac, just how people name things back then. Just like how, some people call this the Battle of Shiloh, some people call it Pittsburgh Landing, First Manassas, First Bull Run. The South and the North had different names for the battles, as well as how they named the armies. Sharpsburg, Antietam, Spotsylvania Courthouse. Anyway. I digress to say all that very possible some of the men from the 6th Mississippi are buried in here, and there's another burial trench I'm going to walk over to here in the next little bit. But first, I'm going to cross, Ray's Field. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to talk about the importance of honoring our Confederate ancestors. I hope y'all can hear me, because the way I'm having to hold the camera right now, I have a feeling I'm like covering my microphone. Anyway, the importance of honoring our ancestors. So I stopped at Stephen D. Lee's grave, who gave us our charge. The reason why and this is a personal thing, the reason why I chose to join the SCV, I was given a choice. I was born into the organization. My dad was a camp commander when I was born. We're very close to the time I was born. Went to my first War Between the States reenactments as a 6-month-old. It's kind of been my thing. But when I got to the age of joining the organization, it was a choice. It wasn't a real hard choice, but it was a choice for me. Remaining active was a choice for me. Growing up, listening to the charge, and then knowing the stories of my ancestors is why it's so important for us to continue to pass that history on to future generations is kind of what influenced me. Now, why Shiloh, besides my ancestor being here, has a very important, significant portion for me, is what happened to Nathan here, my ancestor. So somewhere going across this field, Nathan ends up catching a mini ball to the face. Thus, the report of the surgeon reported that the ball entered into his face by the ala of the nose, which, from my understanding, and if you're a doctor, please correct me, because I want to understand the best as possible, kind of near the sinus cavity, and exited out of the soft palate of the mouth. And in July of 62, he was still not able to eat solid foods. He had survived that wounding, but still couldn't eat solid foods. In September of 62, He was not fit for medical, or medically declared not fit for service, discharged from Confederate service. And that should be the end of Nathan's story. Should be. At Shiloh, Nathan was a sergeant in his company, but I mentioned his rank as captain. Well, in 1864, after sitting out a year of the war, he also lost the use of one of his eyes as a result of the wounding. But probably could have or should have, stayed back at home. Nathan reenlists. Think about that. Guy who goes through, at that time, Shiloh had more casualties than the American War of Independence and the War of 1812. He'd been wounded, yet he chose to re-enlist and served in a cavalry unit for the rest of the war, and surrendered in May of 1865 when Bedford Forrest surrendered his command in Gainesville, Alabama. And I've got a copy of his parole signed there in Gainesville, Alabama. There's some other people that are pulling up over there, kind of near the new Mississippi Monument. I say new; it's the last monument, to my knowledge, has been erected here in the park. So I'm going to let them get out and go along their ways, or stop and read the sign in front of it, just so I'm not getting in front of them. So, okay, 1 month old. Excuse me, Susie. But it's a he could. But anyway, going back to Nathan and his it's also a very beautiful day out here today. If you're reading the accounts about Shiloh, they said it was a bright, springy day with the spring of green. Stuff was starting to bloom out. It's about 65 degrees, maybe 70. Kind of regretting wearing the flannel shirt I'm wearing right now, but it's kind of like a day like today though. Sun was shining. Some of the trees are starting to bud out with life. The grass is turning green. Would love to come back up here in April, as close to the actual anniversary date to get a good feeling. But today's kind of a good feeling from everything I'm reading in the historical accounts. Digressing back to Nathan, though, he could have chosen to set out the rest of the war, but he chose to go and re-enlist. He chose to go back to war. He had two brothers that were in the unit that he was rejoined, or he joined when he re-enlisted. He had another brother that he left in the 6th, who in 1864 died near Iuka after the Battle of Franklin. He was sick. The Franklin Nashville campaign, they're shipping the sick and wounded back south. He was sick. He was put in between some rail cars and fell through. But Iuka is just right around the Corinth area. Digress. He had another brother up in the Army, Northern Virginia, that I talked about when Jamie Graham was commenting this past week. Not Jamie Graham. Mine's a terrible thing to waste. Anyway, died up in the Army, Northern Virginia, and in total it was 8 brothers that went off to fight. Now, what would cause 8 brothers from a middle-class yeoman family in 1861 to go off to fight? Especially one who was like 16 years of age by the time he enlisted. Nathan was not 16, but his youngest brother was around that age. So you think about that. I thought about that. I thought about, why is it important to remember his sacrifice? And am I going to sit here and let some revisionist Yankee who's never, stepped down here, who's never walked these fields, who's never study the trials and the tribulations of what made my family what it is. I'm going to let him write a narrative and say a narrative about my Confederate ancestor, about my ancestor. No, this man was a brave man. Like I said, he by all rights, should by all rights he should have not. Well, you look at the statistics of all the woundings and stuff like that. He probably shouldn't have survived the wound, catching a bullet to the face like that. Um, but yet he did. And then, by all rights, he could have stayed back home. He was discharged. He had his discharge. On my ancestry account, I've got a copy of the letter that he swore and affirmed that he was discharged from the 6th Mississippi Infantry and was allowed to, re-enlist. So that's, but yet I mentioned he chose to stay. He chose to come back and fight. But I want to bring our attention back to that Confederate burial trench. Those guys back there, who are now known but to God who they are, where they're from, they were somebody's father, they were somebody's sons. They gave their ultimate, as to I'm not going to quote him on this, but they gave their all for the cause, same way Nathan did. And Nathan has a headstone. Those guys don't. Those guys have a monument created by the UDC in the 1920s, and it's good. But they think about the mothers and the fathers and the brothers or the wives and sweethearts back home who heard that their loved ones fell at somewhere called Shiloh, but they didn't know whatever happened to them. Besides that, they fell. They didn't know where or if they were buried, and they were just put into a mass grave. So it's very important that we keep our history alive, and it's very important that we continue to defend what our ancestors did. Because everybody's ancestor has a story. They all had struggles, they all had trials, they all had tribulations, and at the end of the day, it's what makes us who we are as a independent Southern people. It makes us who we are as descendants of Confederate veterans. Whether you're a daughter or a son, and it makes us. It's important for us. We have to honor that legacy, and right now, we're in a fight for the ability to honor that legacy. So, yeah. Actually, David, the Sabbath was yesterday. Today's the first day of the week. So, just about, and y'all, I don't know if y'all can see it or not. I got a glare on my phone, but there's the Mississippi Monument. On past it, about where I'm pointing at, is a monument for, I believe, an Ohio battery, or Indiana battery, some Midwestern Yankee battery that was over there. That was supposed to be watching over this encampment. So what ended up happens with the sticks is they come across this field with skirmishers and pickets, stir up the federal encampments, push them back. They begin reforming, and when they hit Ray Springs, you'll see it when I get over there. And I'll mute my microphone when I get over that way, just so I'm not tempted to talk, because again, there are people around. They hit the creek, and you'll be able to see what they had to go up against. All right, no vehicles coming. I can safely cross the street. Also, shout out to the Mississippi Division, SCV, as well as everybody else who helped fund this beautiful monument here at Shiloh. I believe the Mississippi Division, UDC, as well as the taxpayers of Mississippi, helped put that up. It's a very interesting monument. You can't really tell it from this angle, but they're actually carrying a Hardee flag. Those are representations of the men from the 6th Mississippi Infantry. But the quote came from a private in the 15th. And I love this painting because I always think that this soldier right here, if you can kind of see his face, kind of looks like Nathan's wounding. But yeah, it's just me. So this would have been around 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:45, right after dawn. Lieutenant William Thompson, Company H. So this was my first experience being shot at, and I was scared as the next man. Everyone was moving forward, hollering at the top of their lungs. We just had to get those Federals who were shooting at us. There was no time to help the wounded. Most of our men on the ground were close friends, neighbors, and kinfolks. And yeah, that's it's true there. Yeah, especially you look at the kind of like what we were talking about on a couple of episodes of chat ago about the importance of being involved in our communities, because again, our ancestors, their companies were family and neighbors and kinfolks from the same community. Anyway, they continued to push up, and here's Ray Springs. So, kind of looking over there, going down the hill. Which, of course, this has been graded off for people to walk downstairs. They didn't have these stairs back then. I'm sure that would have made things a lot easier on them. I'm sure they did not have it was Illinois. I knew it was some type of Midwestern state. I'm sure they didn't have the little footbridge over there when the 6 came across this way, but you know, see what I'm saying? Uh, Out of the 425 men of that unit, entire regiment that was active for duty, 300 of them were casualties. And they earned the moniker the Bloody Sixth. So we're heading up right now to another burial trench. I'm not going to be able to make all of the burial trenches here at Shiloh. Want to be able to stop at the Okolona Confederate Cemetery, and don't want to run out of daylight. So I'm going to remute myself as I go up the hill, and I'll unmute when I get to the trench. Okay, so there's some other people at the other trench, so I'm just gonna stop back here and give them a chance to look and remember without my commentary. Glad to see it. Um, but right up there, right above my finger, is the other trench. Now, back further on in the woods, back that way, is Shiloh Church. Like I mentioned, it's where Sherman used as his headquarters. A lot of fighting around there. Past there, heading towards the town of Savannah, is the Ruggles Battery, where after Johnston was wounded, he had, or well, not wounded, killed. Um, well, mortally wounded, then died. I think that's more accurate. Um, where Beauregard, after he assumed command, lined up the artillery and shelled the Hornet's Nest. Obviously, behind that is the Hornet's Nest, and then the Federal line, Pittsburgh Landing itself, so on and so forth. Um, but there was a write-up that I was reading about before I stopped about they only got, I think they only got 1,700 thereabouts of the Confederate dead that were put into the trenches. There were some that there are some accounts of the night after the battle. It was a very bad thunderstorm that rolled in, as well as the shells from the Union Navy bombarding the Confederate positions, and through the flashes, they could see wild hogs rooting amongst the corpses. So there's no telling. Just like with any other battle, they didn't get 100% of those picked up and moved to the trenches. Uh, so, and that's the other thing about national parks is I may very well may be standing here, and there's a little area right over there in front of me, could be a Confederate soldier's final resting place that quickly buried by his comrades, but not disinterred by the Federals. Um, so there's no telling. Um, Looks like those folks are starting to leave the area of the trench, so I'll be able to mute myself and walk up there. I was going to give them a couple of minutes before I walk back to the car. Um, yeah, Jason. If I wanted to, and really, there are a couple of SCV compatriots. Short Round from the Tennessee division, he's doing tours. Stark Miller from Mississippi, he's doing tours from up here. That's kind of one of the things that Harrison and I are wanting to do is get with a compatriot or two that knows the battlefields like the back of their hands, and actually come through and do a tour with them. And if we got to take, like, let's say, well, I doubt we will ever do that battle up north. Spend the days, significant time on doing that. Um, but that would have to be an event that we would. There's a couple different options we're working on. I'll just leave it like that. Whether it's trying to open it up for other compatriots, hey, we're gonna do this on this day and see if anybody's interested in showing up. I always try to stop at any fall trees just to see if I see anything. But see if we can do that, or if you can't make it, offer a live stream event, kind of like this. We're still working out those kinks. But that's a project for sometime in the future. Um, so tell you what, if we do that, we're not doing Vicksburg and doing 47 days, though. I don't think that I could afford that. Because most of it was, sitting around and getting shelled. Vicksburg may be a 2-day thing. Do the entire campaign, do the lead up to Vicksburg, and then do Vicksburg itself. And if y'all are interested in that sort of stuff, just let us know. But that's something that we've kicked around in the past, but we're also working on our other secret project that was announced yesterday. So I guess we'll probably go into depth about it a little bit tomorrow. Maybe not. I got to talk to Moose about it. Anyway, so this one was erected in 1935, and you want to, noticing something about the first trench and then this trench, the almost 12 years in difference, or in difference, year wise. Looking at it, I think that was 1927. I may be wrong, but this is still before World War II, when most of the South was still going through the Depression. But yet these ladies of the UDC, they understood, just like we still understand to this day, how important honoring these Confederate soldiers was and is. Anyway, well, I hope y'all have enjoyed this first stop. Hope that it inspires y'all like it inspires me to keep up the fight, keep up the good work. Confederate Flag Day, according to the standing rules of the Confederation, is celebrated on March 4th, which is tomorrow. So I hope y'all have done something this weekend to honor it. If you haven't, you still have today and you have tomorrow. Fly those flags proud. It could be First National, Second National, Third, Regimental battle flag, Naval Jack, AOT, something really obscure. Funny story as I'm walking back a couple years ago. It was right in COVID started. We had a Hardy flag, Claiborne, but division flag, flying out in front of our house, just from Confederate Flag Day, and because it was also March, getting ready for the general's birthday, and we had this woman in our neighborhood who walked by and spoke, and she was rather polite, but she asked us if what the flag meant. If that meant we were under quarantine. And I was able to explain to her, no, ma'am, it was a flag my ancestor fought under, several of my ancestors fought under. It was a Confederate flag, and told the story behind it. That wherever that flag was, it was the hardest fighting could be found there, and really piqued her interest. She ended up moving out of the neighborhood, not because of that, because of some other stuff, but she really enjoyed that. So it is a great way for us to educate our friends and neighbors and everything like that. Bonnie Blue, that's fun. Franklin, yeah. Franklin's kind of hard. Just because of how much urban blight there is up there, or not urban blight, but just how the town has been developed over most of the battlefield. There's the Carter House, which is owned by the Battle of Franklin Trust, which is not that friendly to the truth. My opinions, views and opinions, I'm expressing them. Normal disclaimer. There's the Lotes House, but like, even where Franklin or where Pat Claiborne died at is a surrounded by houses on each side, and it being a even for that time, a certain urban warfare. It's kind of hard to do, but it's not impossible. If you're asking about that, we actually, our first video on this page, if you go way back in the annals of history, was us stopping at Moose and I. We did a live from the McGavick Cemetery, Claiborne's death site, and then we went to headquarters, and then it snowed that night. So yeah, that's doable. We'd have to do the entire campaign, Franklin, Nashville, Spring Hill, everything like that. So anyway, my next stop's going to be a couple hours later. I'm going to stop in Okolona, Mississippi, at the Confederate Cemetery there. Hope y'all are enjoying it. Hope y'all, again, have had a great weekend. Remember that we'll be live Monday, tomorrow, 7 o'clock Confederate Standard Time, for a update on what we have done this weekend, and some other cool things from chat. Laid back episode, nothing really major going on. But I'll see y'all when I stop in Okolona.